Using a silica gel chromatography column and a benzene mobile phase, researchers separated 4 organic molecules: benzaldehyde, ethylbenzene, butanoic acid, and propanol. What is the expected order of elution of the molecules from first to last? So in chromatography, we have a stationary phase and of course a mobile phase. Our stationary phase for chromatography is polar and the mobile phase is nonpolar. So now moving back to the question, we have silica gel, which is a polar compound, and this is going to be our stationary phase. So any polar compound is going to interact with the silica gel because it is also polar, and that means that it will be retained more and it will be eluted much later, or it will elute very, very slowly if it elutes at all. So now that we understand that our stationary phase, silica gel, is polar, our mobile phase is going to be nonpolar. So all of your polar molecules are going to elute last because it's going to interact with the stationary phase more, and all of your nonpolar or the least polar molecules are going to elute the fastest because they are going to interact with the mobile phase more, or rather they will interact less with the stationary phase. So polar compounds are going to elute slowly and nonpolar compounds are going to elute much faster because they're not interacting with the silica gel. So let's take a look at our compounds and determine which ones are more or less polar. Starting with ethylbenzene. So ethylbenzene does not have any hydrogen bonding. So that means that it's going to be very nonpolar. And if it's very nonpolar, it's not going to be interacting with our polar silica gel. So that means that ethylbenzene is going to be retained for the least amount of time. It's going to be eluting very quickly. Moving on to benzaldehyde. This has a small amount of H bonds, so it will be a little bit more polar than ethylbenzene. And since it's a little bit more polar, it's going to interact with silica gel a little bit more, so it's going to be retained a little bit longer, so this will be slightly slower than ethylbenzene. So now if we look at the structure of propanol, propanol has OH bonds which are more polar than just hydrogen bonds. So since OH bonds are more polar, that means they will interact with silica gel once again a little bit more, and they will elute later. And the last to elute would be the butanoic acid because it has many hydrogen bonds, and these hydrogen bonds are going to make this compound extremely polar, and because it is extremely polar, it will interact with silica gel, and because it interacts with silica gel, it will be retained for much longer than the other compounds.